The following is a paid program by Gary C. Johnson, attorney at law. Welcome to Simply the Law, the program that gives you free legal information. Brought to you by the law office of Gary C. Johnson. Hello everyone, welcome into Simply the Law. I'm Keith Casebolt. There's no other place I'd rather be on a Tuesday night than with my friend and the host, Gary C. Johnson.
It's great to be here. Great to be here. How you doing, folks? Thank you for inviting Keith and I to come and visit with you. Don't click us off yet. We might have a little bit of information of some benefit to you. We're pre-recording this, believe it or not, this in the afternoon, so that I can be at the office in case any of you need to call this evening. If any of you been hurt, been in a wreck or anything, just give me a call. I'll be there for a period of time while the program's running, and a short period of time thereafter. All of you have been doing the stuff that you're supposed to do, right? None of you are criticizing, condemning, or complaining. All of you are doing the best you can do, not the best someone else can do. All of you are not taking anything personal, right? You're not doing that. None of you are. None of you are assuming anything. In other words, in your relationship with your spouse or your friends, your children, you're not making those old assumptions that I call imagined slights, which always make you miserable. So I'm sure none of you are doing that. Right? And you're not worrying about anything that you can't control. If you can't control it, you're not worrying about it. Right? And you're all being impeccable with the word.
Gary, just so that I can make everybody at home feel pretty good, I know they probably have done that. I've broken every one of them, all this week.
Yeah, but we expect you to, Keith.
I know, but I tried. That's the problem with it. I really tried this time.
If anyone said it was easy, I wouldn't need to be repeating it so often on this program. I slip myself and find myself criticizing, condemning, and complaining. I find myself not being impeccable with the word. And what that being impeccable with the word means is that words cause harm, they cause damage, they hurt people, they are bad. Don't ever say anything about anyone that you would not want them to hear, because they're going to hear it anyhow. And words are very hurtful, so be impeccable with it. Be careful. You got a short dash, and I want to remind you that you've got a short dash to live in this life, just a very short dash. The tombstone's going to have a year, and a little bitty dash. Well, that little bitty dash was when you lived. Don't spend it being miserable. And remember, no one can make you miserable without your permission except your children.
Amen.
There's always an exception to every rule, and your children can truly make you miserable without you giving permission. I'm hesitant to get started on this stuff because it seems like I need to, from what I'm seeing come through my office anymore, that we need to be talking to each other more about how we can get through this world and this life without being so miserable. And I challenge you, those of you that are watching, to try to think happy thoughts and to look at the positive instead of the negative. And don't worry unless you can change it. We can't worry about who's going to be president. We can't do anything about it. We can vote, but in Kentucky, a small state, but you can change how you deal with the people around you. And you can have an impact on your local government. So get involved and be happy. That's what I'm trying to say to you. Just be happy.
Gary, before you start, let me ask you a question. What effect has it had on your life, your clients? Because anytime someone walks through your door, unfortunately, they're there because they've been horribly injured. The damages were not paid for, and they're having to come to you for help. There's fear, anxiety, there's anguish, mental pain, there's physical pain. This person is walking into your door. Every time somebody opens your door and walks in, they have a world of problems, but yet these are the same people that I get a feeling you draw strength from or energy from because of their positive attitude.
That's right. That's exactly right. I was teaching a seminar to lawyers at the West Virginia Trial Lawyers Association last week. And one of the things that I told them, I said, is people won't be coming to see you if they're not hurt and don't need you. They're not going to come in here to try to get you to do something that's not right, because in the real world that doesn't happen. Once that person comes into your office, and I'm teaching attorneys this, I said, you have an obligation to that person. That obligation is to be their advocate and to be the one that they can lean on in this time of great stress in their life. And that's when I explain to them how they've got to tell these clients about their life being the top of the table, and the little bitty corner of it's going to be the lawsuit, and you're going to be in charge of it. But most of all, I tell them, I said, you have to trust the system. You have to trust your client. And ultimately, you have to trust the jury if you're going to be able to represent your client. If you don't trust your client, you cannot represent them. I don't care how good of a lawyer you think you are. Juries see through it. You have to trust the system will work, the system that our forefathers set up. It is a good system. It is the best system in the world still today. It works. We have all of these courthouses in all of these counties. And those courthouses are there for safety. The safety of our community and to keep us civilized. The courthouse is where people that are criminals get prosecuted and are put in jail so that we will be safe from those people. The courthouse is where that the largest corporation in the nation, if it harms an individual, can be taken and held accountable in our civil system. And it all boils down to safety. How will we be civilized and how will we be safe? That is our system, and it works. And our jury system works. And if a lawyer can start off on their case trusting their client and the system and the jury, they are far, far advanced of, honestly, most lawyers. Because most lawyers are afraid of a jury. Most lawyers are afraid of the system. A lot of lawyers don't trust their own clients. I'm not going to represent somebody I don't trust. And if you're an attorney watching this, I strongly recommend you do the same thing. It's important. Trust is the foundation of our society. We trust people to stay on their side of the road. We trust doctors to follow the standard of care. We have to trust. And when that trust is breached, that's when we have our civil system, the system of justice, and the accountability in the local courthouse. That's all it is. It's nothing major. There's nothing fantastic or nothing magical about all of this. We have a place to go to hold people accountable. Still in America. And I don't care how much money you've got. If you do wrong, if you break the safety rules, if you hurt someone, you're accountable. And that's the good part about our system. Keith, we're going to have to take a break and then go to the computer. What do you think?
You know what? We're going to trust you to keep watching. If you do, you can trust us to come right back. More with Gary C. Johnson and Simply the Law right after this. Simply the Law with Gary C. Johnson will be back in just a moment.
I'm Gary C. Johnson. If you've been hurt in a wreck, you need a talented team to help you put your life back together. For more on the talented team we have put together, go to GaryCJohnson.com and click on Attorney Profiles, or call 800-555-5595. At the Gary C. Johnson Law Firm, we make our living helping people put their lives back together. We want to represent you. Give us a call.
Welcome back to Simply the Law. Gary, you made some really good points. Without trust, we wouldn't get up and ever get on the highway. We wouldn't ever go to work. We wouldn't trust the pill that we're taking for our high blood pressure. We wouldn't trust the doctor who checked us. We wouldn't trust our preacher or even our spouse. Trust is the key into everything.
Civilization is based on trust. If we didn't have trust, we couldn't be civilized. The other thing that's a basic foundation of our civilization is rules. Safety rules. Rules that are designed that if people obey them, we will be safe. We'll be safe on the highway. We'll be safe in the operating room. We'll be safe wherever. We'll be safe from having bad pills be put on the market that's going to do more harm than good. Yet we have to trust. Some people aren't trustworthy. Bottom line, they break the rules. Corporations break the rules. The safety rules. The enforcers of the safety rules is attorneys like myself. Think about it. If you didn't have attorneys that file lawsuits for people that were hurt because others broke the safety rules, who would be there to enforce those rules? The government doesn't. The government doesn't care how bad you get hurt in a wreck. Honestly, the government don't care how bad you get hurt by a bad pill. Oh, they'll fine the company and then they'll take the money and put the money in the government's coffers, and you get nothing. Your only resource and the only people that are there to help you enforce the rules is lawyers such as myself that are plaintiffs' lawyers.
But now let me ask you a question. I just recently saw an article in a newspaper, and this is the propaganda, a new drug that they've come up with. And the article and the person that was making the commentary said this drug could be on the market today. It could be helping these patients today. But the drug company will not put it on the market because they know thousands of lawsuits will come in against this drug. And if we could only do away with these trial attorneys, you could get this much needed medication that you need for this problem.
If that drug would be subject to a lawsuit, then that drug does far more harm than it does good or would ever do. Bottom line. A jury decides whether or not the drug was bad, not us lawyers. All we do is tattletale and give that information to 12 good, decent, honest people that's got no dogs in the fight. And those good 12 decent, honest people which represent the people as our Constitution visualized when it was formed by our forefathers, they ultimately make the decision whether or not this drug company defrauded the nation with that drug. Now, if they're worried about lawsuits because of this drug they've got, then they know the drug is dangerous, and they know that they will be held accountable by lawyers who will tattletale to the jury, which is the ultimate authority, the people. If they can get us out of the system, and if they can get the jury out of the system, and trust me, there's a huge move in this nation to do that. If they can get it done, then it's going to be just exactly like the wolves going to the sheep and saying, we wouldn't have any problems here if you could get rid of those blamed dogs. The dogs are the problem. Me and you, we can get along. And when the sheep get rid of the dogs, what's going to happen? Well, that's exactly what tort reform is in this nation today, as propagated by corporate America and the insurance industry. It's asking you to help them get rid of the dogs so the wolves can do what wolves do. Bottom line. They have done a brilliant job over the years, a brilliant job of making everyone believe we are the problem and that the jury system is broken. America has bought into it. I'm asking you to please think. If we couldn't hire a lawyer and there was nowhere for us to go when we're harmed, what would we do? Who would protect us? Who would enforce the safety rules? If everyone, and I've said this before, if everyone obeyed the safety rules, if every drug company was responsible with their drugs, I would be out of business. There wouldn't be any need for, there is a way that you can get rid of plaintiffs' lawyers, and it's easy. Obey the rules. People don't run over someone. Truck drivers don't fall asleep because they're working over hours or they're on drugs. If everyone obeys the rules, you don't need lawyers like me, and you don't need to have, there'll be nothing to tattletale to the jury about. All we do as plaintiffs' lawyers, the only thing we do, is we gather the information at a great expense, and we tattletale to the ultimate authority and report it to the authority. The authority is the American jury. There is no other place to report. We can't report it to the government. The government don't care. We can report it to a jury, and then the jury has the power today, to take action. 5 years from now, I don't know. A lot of states have already bought into it. A lot of states are enacting legislation to prevent people from being able to recover fully for their injuries.
Gary, let me ask you a question on that. Just recently in the news, we had a professional athlete who was being prosecuted by the government. The government said they had to prove that this person was wrong, but it had to go before a jury, and the jury decided the government was wrong. Mm-hmm. And they had a not guilty verdict. So the jury not only protects the citizens, but it can also say no to the government.
Thomas Jefferson, in his infinite wisdom, basically said, the only way you can ever enforce the rights of the people is by the jury system being preserved. You cannot have constitutional rights if you don't have a jury that's there to protect those rights. As I've said before, the jury system is under attack by the big money in this nation. The court system is under attack. We attorneys are under attack. Why are we under attack? And the reason we're under attack is simple. They want a free ride to get to the sheep without any accountability. The wolves want rid of the dogs. Right now, we're the yapping dogs that's yapping and making all the noise so that somebody will come and save the sheep, which is the jury. And if you take us yapping dogs out of the system, which that's what they're after. It's an analogy I gave you. I want you to think. If I can get you to think, I think you'll look around and you'll see how important our system is. We're going to take let's go to the computer. Okay. Let's just go to the computer. There'll be no break. There's the number. The one you saw in the commercial is not the right one in between, so this is the real number to call, 800-337-4002. You can text us also. Naturally, we've got to go to the website and download this app. In general, as usual, make sure you have underinsurance that protects you and your family. Never sign a document agreeing that any dispute will be settled by arbitration. Look for them when you check someone into the nursing home. Look for them in coal leases. Look for them at hospital admission papers. If it says the word arbitration, say, I don't want to sign this document. Bad news if you do. Now let's talk a little bit about some of your basic speeding rules, because anymore these programs come from what I've seen in my office. Okay. KRS 189-392. A person shall not operate a vehicle at a greater speed than is reasonable and prudent, having regard for the traffic and for the condition and use of the highways. Now what that means is, just because the speed limit is 70 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour and there's ice on the road, that does not mean you get to travel that speed. That is a rule. That's a safety rule. Most of our roads that are major roads in Kentucky now, the speed limit is 70 miles per hour, even though the official speed limit is 65. There was an exception put in by the legislature that allowed certain roads to now have 70. So most of your major highways that are divided in Kentucky is 70. It's 55 miles per hour on all other state highways outside business or residential districts. And naturally, there's some exceptions to the business and residential. It goes down 45, 35, 25 miles an hour. Just reminding you folks of what you already should know. 35 miles an hour in business or residential districts, 15 miles per hour on off-street parking facilities. If you're in a parking facility, you're not allowed to travel over 15 miles per hour, even if it's just a lot.
Quick question for you before we go to break. Whenever you have an accident come into your office, how many times out of 10 is speed a factor?
Speed is a major factor in causing wrecks, especially on inclement weather. Speed isn't as much of a factor when it's dry, but people think that, well, it's 70 miles an hour, I'm going to travel 70 miles an hour, and there may be ice on the road. It may have just started to rain. Bad time, especially here in eastern Kentucky, where you've got all of the oil and grime on our roads. When it first starts to rain, and especially if it's been warm weather, the roads are really slick and people it doesn't register. Well, it's not snowing, it's warm weather, it's beautiful, sun's been shining, it's now raining. You see a lot of wrecks, I do, where speed causes the wreck because people are driving at a speed greater than what they should be driving for the conditions of the highway. Bottom line on that. Let's take a break before we go back to the computer.
We're going to come back. Welcome into Simply the Law. We hope you'll stay with us. More with Gary C. Johnson right after this. Simply the Law with Gary C. Johnson. We'll be back in just a moment.
I'm Gary C. Johnson. If you've been hurt in a wreck, you need a talented team to help you put your life back together. For more on the talented team we have put together, go to GaryCJohnson.com and click on Attorney Profiles, or call 800-555-5595. At the Gary C. Johnson Law Firm, we make our living helping people put their lives back together. We want to represent you. Give us a call.
Welcome back to Simply the Law. You've made so many good points in this program because most of us have dogs as pets. Whenever there's a car that pulls up, we hear the dog barking. If there's a bear or something in the woods, we hear the dog barking. If a stranger comes near the house, we hear the dog barking. And we know that is protection to us because it's an alert for us to know that something is going on. And you made that example with the attorneys. I hadn't thought about that, but really, literally the yelping dog that is saying, watch out, this is
We
bad.
go, "Beep, beep, 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 beep." And we tattletale. I told a jury one time, I said, I'm here to tattletale on these people for what they've done. I think you need to know what they've done to your community. And I'm just the messenger, and I'm going to report this to what I consider the ultimate authority, and I'm going to ask you to do something about it. And it's the truth. That's what it's all about. That's why we have our courthouses. But if you can get rid of the lawyers like myself, if they can get rid of us, and they can put us out of business, and they can legislate it to the point to where you can't afford to file a lawsuit, then we will have no safety. They will be able to do whatever they want to with drugs or anything else. And it's like throughout history, even when people were in the caves, they had to spend a great amount of their time trying to figure out how to stay safe. They'd make sure they had their fires built or whatever, have a lookout. That's not changed. Even though we're civilized and even though we have all of these fancy things, the bottom line is, if we're not vigilant in our safety, we will not be safe.
Gary, are we buying into all of this propaganda because we think we're going to save $5 on our car insurance or $4 on homeowners, or somehow businesses are going to locate in our community if we'll get rid of all the attorneys?
It's purely propaganda paid for by big pharma, insurance industry. The folks that do not want to be held accountable. They want to be able to put any drug on the market they can choose, regardless of its consequences, and never be held accountable. It's that the trucking companies, the large trucking companies, the insurance companies in this nation would like to be able to do whatever they do on the highways and never be held accountable to the individuals that's harmed. That's what they're trying to do in this nation. They're calling it tort reform. It's the opposite of what tort reform is. Tort reform ought to make it easier to sue drug companies. Tort reform ought to make it easier to hold large trucking companies accountable for all the damages that they may do when they break the safety rules. Tort reform ought to force insurance companies to pay legitimate claims without forcing people to file lawsuits. Now that would be true tort reform. Instead, it is now classified in this nation, tort reform, as being let's prevent people from being able to access the court system.
Yeah.
Let's close the doors to the courthouse. Let's fix it so these lawyers cannot afford to file these lawsuits. That is how they're defining tort reform. It is the opposite of what it should be.
My friend, we have run out of time. You've made some great points. The best, tort reform, it means no accountability to the people that did damage to you. On behalf of my friend Gary C. Johnson, I'm Keith Casebolt. Thank you so much for tuning in this week to Simply the Law. We look forward to seeing you again next week, right here at this same time.